Welcome to Potter Revisited, episode 77. I'm Tori.
And I'm Shay.
Today we are covering chapter 17 of Goblet of Fire, The Four Champions.
Or, as we like to call it, Exciting Death Tournament.
Well, as we left off from the end of last chapter, we got the three champions, or so we thought, of the Triwizard Tournament. We had Victor Crumb from Durmstrang, Fleur Delacour from Beauxbatons, and Cedric Diggory from Hogwarts. But at the last minute, there is another name, and of course, it's Harry's name.
Imagine if it was just Neville, though. What if it was just Neville? Like Neville Longbottom. He'd be like, no thanks, I'm good. And then he'd sit back down and they'd be like, all right, you're right, Neville, you don't want to do this. Carry on. I guarantee they wouldn't have made Neville do it.
Yeah, but we open up with this awkward room, just dead silent. Everyone's staring at Harry.
Yeah, I would die of embarrassment in Harry's shoes. I would just die. Everyone's staring. It's dead quiet. No one's clapping. No one's cheering. No one's even, saying, what the hell? It's just, I would die. I would melt away and die, and Voldemort would win because I would have died of embarrassment before he even had a chance to lay hands on me.
Yeah, I had a similar point that this is my living nightmare. And yeah, I would die of awkwardness, of embarrassment. Just, bury me. But Harry cuts through the awkwardness because Dumbledore kind of insists, Harry, come here. He goes into the room with the other champions. Yeah, Bagman's, really, immediately into it. The other champions are kind of, caught off guard when Harry comes in. But Bagman's, all for Harry. He's like, oh, yay, another champion. And I feel like we know at this point Bagman's, in super debt because of all his gambling addictions and problems. And we do know that he makes a bet on Harry later on. And I feel like this is him realizing, this is the answer to his prayers, because he could kind of, Harry's younger, so he can kind of, he feels like he can take advantage of Harry and get him to win with his help, but he wouldn't have the chance to with the other champions because they're older and more self-aware.
I also think he just likes the excitement and, the messiness and the unexpectedness of it. He's like, this is hype.
Oh, yeah.
It's supposed to be 3, it's 4. How exciting. But also, not only is there more, but it's Harry Potter, someone who's already an established celebrity, kind of, on top of Krum, who is already an established celebrity. It's such a good, exciting, PR situation for someone who's trying to, market the tournament to some extent. It's exciting, it's a twist, it's, as someone who doesn't realize the real-world consequences, it's just exciting and super easy to be hyped about.
Once the champions find out that Harry has also been chosen, Fleur is not about it, and she calls him, a little boy, and Harry's really offended by it, but I'm like, Harry, you are a little boy. You know 3 spells.
You know 3 frickin' spells. But also, it's more offensive coming from someone who is only, 4 years older than him. Although, that's a big 4 years. He is 14, 15, 16, 17.
I feel yeah, to him, it feels like it's not that big, but 14 and 17 is,
is a huge difference.
Yeah.
14 doesn't really count as, a teenager. 14, you're still kind of a child, and 17, you're, a proper teenager. But I'm sure it hurts coming from someone who, when you're younger, you feel like you're closer in age to someone who's 3 years older than you. But when you're 3 years older than someone and the ages are 17 and 14, the difference in maturity is a lot more noticeable. So I'm sure for Harry, it's very offensive. But for Fleur, it's just no, you're literally I remember being 14 ages ago. I did all this dumb shit 17-year-old me would not do. Child.
But of course, everyone's kind of getting mad that Harry is now, the 4th champion. They feel caught off guard.
Yeah, Hogwarts odds have just increased substantially. Each house had a 33.333% chance of winning, or each school rather had a 33.333% chance of winning. And now Hogwarts has a 50% chance of winning.
Harry's trying to he doesn't really know what to say because he was just, he's completely caught off guard because, he didn't put his name in. But, Snape comes in and he's just oh, Harry definitely did this. He's always breaking the rules. And it's just does Snape really think that Harry was able to go over Dumbledore's age line? Harry's 14 and he knows 3 spells. He did not do this.
I think Snape would believe that James could figure it out. Therefore, he believes that it's possible Harry could. He's absolutely James would figure out how to subvert the rules, get around the boundaries, and make himself the center of attention. So the fact that that just happened to Harry makes total sense. And he probably did it the same way his father would have done it.
I don't know. I feel like Snape just used this moment to just kind of shit on Harry, so I'm giving him a sex point.
But he also seems to be one of the only people who's concerned that maybe Harry just should not be allowed to do that.
Dumbledore takes this moment to, kind of read Harry's mind, I guess. He kind of looks at him in that X-ray type way Harry always describes. And then he's like, oh, Harry. He asks calmly, I should say, as this is the infamous moment in this book, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire? And Harry says no. And Dumbledore is like, yeah, of course he didn't.
Because that's dumb. That's fucking dumb. You know, you don't need to try hard to almost die every year. It happens naturally. I do think it's nice of Dumbledore to actually ask Harry if he entered, because no one else seems to think that there's a chance he didn't. Like, everyone else is like, obviously he did this on purpose.
Yeah.
So it sucks to be us that he gets to be in this. It sucks for us. It's not fair for our schools, blah, blah, blah. And no one's like, okay, but if he didn't enter, it actually just sucks mostly for him. And like, it's the first time he's been treated like a person, Dumbledore asking him, rather than being treated sort of like an object with everyone else talking about him and around him and not really acknowledging him at all.
Yeah. Harry's just been thrown into this, like, with no consent on his behalf, and he just has to, like, he's expected just to, like, go along with it. And he's like, I didn't consent to this. I didn't have any part of this.
I didn't ask for this. I don't want this.
Yeah, but I thought it was interesting that Dumbledore also asks Harry if he asked an older student to put his name in for him. And I'm like, would that have worked? Because if so, like, Dumbledore, that's so stupid. Like, why didn't you think about that? Like, that's such, like, I feel like if you try to go over the age line, I feel like the next thing you would try is asking someone who's of age to do it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe Dumbledore also put in safeguards against that, but like less so. So like maybe if someone who was older and also they did some special magic trick, like polyjuice potion or some such, maybe that's a way around it.
I mean, we do know that, like, the way he got in was that it was put under a different school, which I also think is really stupid. Because does it have to be a real school, or is it a school that doesn't exist?
I wonder if they just didn't configure the cup properly. Like, when you're like doing like programming or something, you have to say like how many expected results are there and what are the expected results. And someone was just like, didn't do that part. So an unlimited amount of students and or schools could have been entered, and one for every school would be drawn regardless. Like, they forgot to say there are only 3 drawn names and it's from these 3 schools. Instead, they said 1 name per school. And so because they didn't sort of set that limit on the cup, whoever originally enchanted it, that was the loophole. And I'm sure it's not something that's like, you don't realize there's a flaw in your security until someone cracks it. So they're like, oh, no one's ever tried to do that, so we didn't realize it was a thing, because obviously this cup is very old, and whoever made it's probably long since dead.
Going through this, they're all kind of arguing about, like, if Harry has to do this and what's going on. And McGonagall's really, like, the only person that's, you know, reasonable and kind of looking out for Harry.
An actual adult.
Yeah, because Dumbledore's not saying stuff. And obviously Karkaroff and Maxime are upset, and, like, that's valid because they were led here under these conditions that they agreed to, and all of a sudden the conditions that they agreed to are not what they agreed to.
I understand completely Karkaroff and Madame Maxime being upset, because it really is unfair for Hogwarts to get that second champion. Again, now it's a 50% chance Hogwarts wins and a 25% chance for each of them that their school wins. And the odds are completely skewed. And I'm sure they entered this wanting it to be a PR opportunity for their school, a chance for them as a teacher, but also their students and their school to get a shot at glory. And now they're coming into it from a place of disadvantage immediately. And it's extra sus because, like, Hogwarts is the school that's hosting. So, like, it feels like maybe they did some underlying manipulation. Like, I can see why they would think Dumbledore did this. Hogwarts did this on purpose because they want better chances of winning.
Exactly.
And Karkaroff, who's probably especially proud that his favorite show pony, Victor Crumb, who's already got celebrity status, is the one that got chosen, is probably like, oh, Dumbledore didn't think it was fair that I got a shiny celebrity in the tournament who already has fans and people who love him, so he put his in too.
And then this is also the point where they kind of reiterate that Harry has to compete because he came with the Goblet of Fire, and that's a magical contract, so he has no choice, he has to compete. And they don't really explain, like, why he has to compete. Yeah, we talk about this a lot in the last episode, where it just kind of feels like weak writing, where it's just like, for the plot of the book, Harry has to compete in this tournament, but they don't really explain
what are the repercussions of him not participating?
Yeah.
Because the potential repercussions of him participating are him dying, him losing a limb, him being dismembered, him being publicly embarrassed, which sucks when you're 14 years old. Like, there's a whole lot of things at risk by letting him enter and making him follow through. Not letting him enter because he didn't enter, but letting him participate. And those are all like peak level of serious, like again, potential death consequences. So it's hard for me to believe they didn't spend more time trying to find loopholes and stuff. Like, you have to just flat out say, if he does not show up and start the first task, he will fall over and die. That's how this game works. You have to tell us, otherwise it's like the consequences of him participating seem worse than the alternative, because they don't even mention the alternative, let alone trying to find loopholes or, again, adjusting the tournament. What if they do the first task is a game of chess and the first person eliminated from the tournament is eliminated from the tournament, you know? And like, that's just a fun rule of the tournament. He's not participating. He lost fair and square in the first round and was kicked out and can't keep going. Like, they did the bare minimum of trying to find loopholes to get Harry out of this.
Previous books, when they introduce kind of like a magical obstacle or whatever, it's very much explained like how it works. And I feel like it always makes sense until this. But I feel like the Goblet of Fire, they just kind of gloss over how it works and the consequences and repercussions of everything, just to get Harry in the situation he needs to be in for the plot of the book. And I feel there's a lot of big gaps in it. Like, even the way he was entered, like, why wouldn't Dumbledore consider someone, like, an older person entering someone else? Like, it just feels like a lot of things were, like, glossed over, and we were just told to, like, you know, that makes sense. But it's just, like, compared to the other situations in the book, this feels, like, very weak.
There's no good logic. It's underthought out. It seems like they just needed the plot device and didn't do any work to make it have any logic, or like, it doesn't feel believable to me, the lack of effort to get Harry out of this situation.
Yeah.
The lack of backstory as to why they won't even try.
All they ever say is that, oh, it's a magical contract, and that's all they say. And I'm like, well, what does that even mean?
Like, he didn't actually, even if it's like a unbreakable vow, you know, first of all, unbreakable vows are specific and it's between the two people, and they say, I promise to do the following, and they specifically say what they're going to do. And like, these students weren't even given enough information about the tournament to have made such a agreement. Like, he said, it's dangerous, people have died, do you want to play, kids? And they all said, yay.
I mean, they signed their names on their, like, in their own hand, and like, that feels like contract, like, to me, but Harry didn't.
But like, you have to read the terms and conditions before you click, right? And like, to me, in a situation like this where death is the option, you have to make sure they've read the terms and conditions, and they didn't. Like, they didn't even give them a document to read of all the possible liabilities of entering. They're just like, you might die, but it'll be great fun, sign up now. And everyone signed up, and then Harry didn't sign up, and it's still like, oh well, you might die, rough luck, kid. Like, especially, I know Dumbledore has ulterior motives and wants to see how Harry will do and thinks this is a great test for Harry, but like, front and center, Dumbledore's number one priority should be like, yeah, but maybe he'll die, so maybe this isn't the right thing for Harry, like our one and only hope against evil. Like, maybe having him die for funsies isn't safe enough, like, it's not worth the risk, because if Harry dies, we're all gonna die, basically.
Especially because, like, there's this, Harry knows there's a plot to kill him, and I feel like it's very convenient that he's like, oh, there's a plot to kill me, and then all of a sudden he's in the Triwizard Tournament, and he's like, huh, that's interesting.
It's gonna be awfully easy to kill me now, like.
But going back to the discussions, Moody also comes out kind of, you know, telling everyone that Harry obviously didn't put his name in himself because that's stupid, and obviously it's like a nefarious plot, which is like really whiplashy, like reading it, because Moody is really Barty Crouch Jr., who did put his name in.
I mean, he's telling the truth. Harry wouldn't do it. He would be an idiot to enter, of course, and Harry should be complaining because he shouldn't want to be in there, because he is underprepared and not capable of the things you need to be capable of to win the tournament. So like, he's speaking the truth. He's speaking the truth with the tidbit of knowledge, knowing that Harry didn't enter. But regardless, the logic is Harry shouldn't have entered, wouldn't have entered, and didn't enter, and he's correct. You know? It is funny that he's also the only one sympathizing for Harry, though. Like, Harry should be complaining. Absolutely.
Moody also lays out like how he likely got his name in the Goblet of Fire, which is what he did, which is also kind of interesting.
That's dumb. Like, what if Dumbledore decides to do some backtracking to see how it happens and discovers it's exactly that way? And he's like, awfully quick to have come up with the exact way it happened there, Moody. Like, I know Moody's a really good dark wizard catcher and knows how to think like the enemy and stuff, but he came up with it in like 2 minutes. And Dumbledore didn't come up with it after, I'm assuming, months of figuring out how the cup works and stuff in order to run this tournament. Like, big slacker energy on Dumbledore's part.
It's also like, there's no investigation done. Like, Moody's saying that it had to be, like, dark magic that hoodwinked this big magical object. And they're just like, oh, that's interesting. And they do no follow-up.
Like, gee, I wonder what the end goal of this dark magic is. Like, there's no understanding of consequences or motives.
Yeah, they didn't put Harry in the tournament for shits and giggles. It was like, a death bot.
Yeah, it wasn't like the Harry Potter fan club being like, Harry needs more attention. We're going to enter him. It wasn't that.
Everyone just kind of skates over, like, the reason, like, why Harry is likely put into this and how. They're just like, oh, well, he has to do it now. And that's all they kind of, like, think about.
They should have brought out some Veritas serum, given him a sip, and been like, Harry, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire? And Harry Potter would have been like, no. And they'd be like, did you want to enter the tournament? And Harry'd be like, no. And they'd be like, did you think about entering the tournament? And he'd be like, yes, I'm a Gryffindor. Of course, I thought about it.
Yeah.
Like, but I wouldn't have actually entered because I got enough shit going on. I don't know why they never use Veritas serum. Like, that was a great opportunity to use it, to know Harry didn't enter, because that's kind of why a lot of the people are writing him off. They assume he did it. Very few people consider the reality that maybe he didn't, which then is when it becomes scary. And then it's when people, even the other headmasters, might be like, okay, we need to figure out who did this and why, because our students might become collateral in this whatever evil plot this is, But they didn't, because they just assumed Harry was lying and entered. And someone should have, used the number of magical tools they have at hand to find out if that was the truth or not. Like, it's not that hard.
But we get some foreshadowing to Karkaroff's past with Moody, because Moody starts, kind of laying into him, like, really personally. And Karkaroff is, like, very embarrassed and, like, all red in the face.
Moody's like, I know you're evil. I know what nefarious criminal organizations you associate with.
Yeah.
And Karkaroff, who's probably, like, very close-lipped about his criminal ties, is like, I don't know what you're talking about. And meanwhile, poor Snape is just pissed off and no one's listening to him. And he's like, this is stupid. Why is this happening? Why is Harry in this? Why the fuck was he enter? Why would he enter himself? Or why would we let him participate? And everyone else is just little. Snape's just being Snape. But like, Snape should be pissed. He swore to protect Harry. Okay? That was the deal he made with Dumbledore. And then Dumbledore's out here letting Harry participate in this exciting death tournament. And Snape's like, no. You made me swear to spend the rest of my life taking care of his brat who I hate. And you're just pushing him into death tournaments for funsies? Like, am I a joke to you?
But, yeah, Snape, just, like, questioning Dumbledore, what he's doing, as always. Because Harry's just, always thrown into immediate danger. And Snape's like, what has this all been about? Like, am I being punked right now?
Stares into the camera, like, and that's how I knew Dumbledore hated me.
Yeah, but we also see Crouch here, and Harry notices that he does not look well like he looked at the Quidditch World Cup. He looks very sick, and he's, like, really gaunt in, like, the light of the fire, and, yeah, we know at this point, having read the book before, that he's under the Imperious Curse here, because Barty Crouch Jr. is masquerading as Mad-Eye Moody.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like little hints that, like, Barty Crouch is not what he was before. He's not looking great.
I mean, it is a sign of how good of a wizard he must be that he's clearly trying to fight it. Because if you just leaned in and let yourself be Imperious Cursed, I'm sure you don't look that physically unwell. So he's still fighting it, which is a good sign for Barty Crouch as a real person underneath all that. But also, it's really easy to, like, see someone who's a government official looking exhausted and tired and pale and be like, of course it's just because he's in government. Like, that must be exhausting. Like, he has to do so much paperwork. He held this big tournament and it was a shit show. And now they're holding another tournament. It hasn't even started and it's already a shit show. Like, this poor guy.
I do like when Dumbledore's asking him to stay over. He's like, oh no, I left my assistant in charge, and he's a bit too overeager. I need to get back. And it's Percy. The discussion has kind of ended, and they're just kind of like, Harry has to compete. That's the end of it. And Harry gets no real say in anything. All he really says is, like, I didn't enter myself. And no one really believes him besides, like, Dumbledore.
Yeah, they're like, that's nice, dear. Get ready to die now.
When they leave, Cedric's actually really nice to Harry. Like, I feel like Cedric got this one moment of, like, glory for Hufflepuff, which, like, rarely ever happens. We talked about that last episode. And he just...
Yeah, he got about a minute and a half of glory.
Yeah. And it just shows, like, Cedric's, like, a really nice guy. He kind of jokes, like, oh, we're going to compete against each other again. And he's, like...
He is everything that is supposed to be good about Hufflepuffs. Like, he didn't seek out it for the glory necessarily, like some people would have. He a little bit for Hufflepuff glory, but a little bit for probably the joy of doing it and the excitement of the tournament, you know? But, like, he's not immediately super aggressive about it. He's not mad. It's not like he's...
And he has like reasons to be upset. Like, I feel like he would be justified to be upset.
He's like, this is my one thing ever, and you're taking it, and you have all of the things every year. What the heck? But he's not like that at all. He's so, like, that sort of that empathy and that kindness and that, like, habitual need to, like, be kind to others and sort of reach for friendship rather than competition, even though he puts it forward in sort of a competitive way. It's in, like, a friendly competitive way.
Yeah. It's like in like a fun way. He's just like, oh yeah, I'm excited to compete against you again because you're a good competitor. Yeah, and he doesn't really like do it. He does ask Harry about how he got in, and Harry, of course, is just like in his deny era. He's like, I didn't do it, and Cedric obviously doesn't believe him, but he does not like rude about it. And in Harry's mind, he has this moment where he's just like, Ron and Hermione are going to believe him with no question. And it's such a gut punch when Ron obviously doesn't believe him at the end of the chapter.
Yeah.
Because in Harry's mind, he's just like, he can't wait to go find Ron and Hermione because he's like, this crazy thing happened. And he just doesn't question the fact that they're going to like be with him in this.
Yeah. That's what's so heartbreaking is Harry was worried about all these people not believing him, but he just assumed and felt completely confident that Ron and Hermione would believe him. He couldn't even consider a worst case scenario where Ron didn't believe what he said.
It's never happened before. And it's just like they've always been like together. And he's especially Ron, he's always had his back no matter what. And like, so he doesn't question it.
Yeah, because sometimes Hermione does side quests that they don't support or care about or have interest in, or she values school over adventure. And like they've often been on the other side of issues with Hermione, but they're always on the same side of that issue.
So it's hard. It's hard growing up. But Harry gets into the common room, and of course there is a big party, and Harry doesn't want a party. This is like also a nightmare situation for me, where like you're kind of forced into this like group hangout, big party situation when you're like running on like low and you're like, I need to go be by myself and I don't want to party, and everyone's like, but why? Don't be a buzzkill.
I want to know how like what went on between the students of Gryffindor House between being silent when Harry's name was called and deciding that they were fully on board supporting him and on his team. Like I wonder how quickly they went from like, how do you think he did it? I don't know. Why would he do it? Well, I don't know. He's a Gryffindor. Wouldn't you have if you knew you could? Yeah, I guess. And then they're just like bandwagoning. Like I wonder how long it took them to come to the realization that like...
Yeah, I feel like it is kind of the Gryffindor way. I don't think it would take long because I feel like we do talk about how this tournament is kind of like a big Gryffindor thing. Like all of them that were of age would put their names in because it's like everything that Gryffindors are kind of like known for, like daring and nerve, improving yourself, bravery,
risking your life for glory.
Yeah. And it's just like all the fun things. And I think Gryffindor likes being like kind of like running the school with like their competitive edge. And I feel like we did see like when they were talking about who was putting their names in that they didn't want Cedric, they didn't want a Slytherin. Like they wanted it to be Gryffindor because that's like they want like the glory of like being school champion. And so they're happy that they had the chance of like having a school champion that's a Gryffindor.
It's interesting though how quickly it turned around for them because they didn't start cheering immediately. They needed like at least 15 minutes to talk it through with each other and be like, are they going to even like, did they even question if Harry was going to be allowed to participate? I'm sure at one point they were like, there's no way Harry's going to be allowed to participate because he's not old enough. They're not going to let him. And they were like, yeah, that sucks. It would have been fun if he could. Like, because to me, that would be my first thought is, don't know how this happened, but there's no way the administration is allowing it because he is way too young to enter, and that's that.
I think a lot of them probably would have thought that they would let him because Harry kind of gets away with a lot with Dumbledore. And so they're just like, obviously Harry's gonna do it because Dumbledore likes Harry and he gets to do whatever he wants.
We're just the school that surrounds Harry Potter. It's really all about him. We're just here so he learns to socialize with peers.
Harry finally gets away from the party. Hermione is nowhere to be found, but he goes up to his dormitory, and thank God, Ron is there. And Ron's just, sitting by himself with this forced fake smile on his face, and Ron's just, holding it together, so, trying his best to hold it together and be this fake, happy, cheerful Ron. But there's, in his voice, you can kind of see Harry's just Harry's pissed off. He's done with this whole night. He's been forced into this whole thing without his consent, and all he wants to do is bitch with his friends about Ron and kind of go into how this happened. But all Ron is talking about is the tournament, and he's kind of insinuating that Harry did this without him, and to Ron, that's a huge betrayal because they do everything together. And it's the jealousy is just slowly coming out of him, where he's trying to hold it together because Harry's his friend, but he can't really control the fact that this is the one thing that he really wanted at this point. And Harry doesn't even care. Harry didn't tell him anything. And it's he kept it a secret. And to Ron, it's just he's just I thought we were best friends. And you get to have everything all the time again, and I'm just here, and I just have to take it. So it's hard reading this because it's such a gut punch. Harry just assumed Ron would understand, and Ron obviously doesn't. But also you can see it from Ron's perspective of the fact that he's 14, and this is I think when you really start to see your peers and what they receive and what you don't, and
that's when you start doing a lot of self-comparison for sure.
Yeah. And Ron's been going through it a lot, I think, early on, just being very aware of his financial situation with his family, where he fits in at school and with his peers, and comparing himself to Harry. And this is just one point where he's just it feels like a betrayal, and he's really kind of, I think, he can't deal with that. He can't really hide it like he would have in the previous books, where he kind of swallows it down because Harry's his friend. But at this point, it's too much for him. And you can see it from both perspectives, where Harry's completely flabbergasted that Ron just is talking about these things that's not important to Harry. He's I didn't enter this tournament, and I don't want to be in this tournament, and this is a crazy big thing, and it's probably a death plot. And all Ron's thinking about is the fact that you entered this tournament, you didn't even tell me.
Yeah.
You didn't even think you didn't help me so I could have a chance too.
Yeah. It's hard because if it's hard not to be I'm mad at Ron because come on, Harry obviously didn't do this. But it's also hard to imagine if you somehow thought Harry did, how much it would hurt as Ron. A, that Harry entered without him, but B, that Harry didn't even tell him that he was doing it, and didn't even give him a chance. I can see how much it would hurt and feel like a betrayal. And how much how easy it is when you're mad at someone to turn them into a villain, because that's basically what Ron's done. It's not just Harry did this thing because he wanted to be the champion. It's Harry, who already is basically Hogwarts champion in all other things, wanted to be the champion again and be the center of attention, even though he already gets that given to him so frequently. And he did it, and he didn't tell me about it. So he did it behind my back, and he did it without sharing, and he just wants this for himself, and he didn't even give anyone else a chance. And it's so easy to turn it into this conspiracy of Harry just lives for attention and can't function without it and needs to be the center of attention at all time. It's really easy to build up that narrative in your head for Ron,
I think deep down Ron knows the truth, but he just can't handle it right now, so he just can't be around Harry because he's looking at this guy and he's just he has everything, and he has this one other thing that I would want. Ron wants attention. Ron wants to be validated.
Yeah.
And Harry gets everything from what he sees, and he just can't he knows up deep down Harry wouldn't want this. Harry hates attention. Harry hates the way he's treated, but he just can't handle it.
It's hard for him to understand that I would kill to have this thing, and Harry doesn't even want it but gets it. That it's unfair. It's so unfair. Not that Ron should have been in the tournament because, again, he's 14. But certainly it would have been much happier for Ron if Harry and him just watched the tournament and cheered for Cedric and got to experience the tournament together as viewers rather than Harry experiencing it as a champion and Ron being on the sidelines again.
Yeah, jealousy is a beast. And this is kind of the 14-year-old experience where, you're really aware of what your peers receive and what you don't receive and what you don't have and what other people do have. And jealousy and envy are big emotions, and it's really hard to kind of control those urges when you're this young.
It really is crazy how, besides Dumbledore early on, really no one's asking Harry how he feels about this. They mention Potter not having said anything, and they never really let him say anything at any point. Like, they don't ask him if he's okay with this. They don't ask him if he's excited. They don't ask him if he's nervous. Like, even if you assume he entered on purpose, there's a real possibility that he didn't think he would win. You know what I mean?
Or get chosen, because, he's a child.
Yeah. Like, what are the chances? So, like, even if he entered on purpose, he's probably shitting a brick right now. And no one stops to think, like, check in with him and be like, hey, so when you entered, did you think you were actually going to get chosen? And does it feel how you expected? And are you okay? And, like, not even, like, to me, at the bare minimum, even if you assume, of course, Harry entered, he's a Gryffindor, he's brave, he loves this. And of course, he's excited, he's a Gryffindor, he's brave, he loves this. You at least want to know the juicy details of what happened in the room with the other champions and the heads of the school. Like, you want to be like, oh, were they mad? Were they excited? Was Cedric whiny about it? Like, what's Fleur Delacour like? You know what I mean? Like, they should have questions, and they're just so busy being blindly hyped because they're like, oh, good, another win for Gryffindor, that they, like, forget that there's people involved. And, like, that's the Slytherin in me. I'm like, I want to know what they're talking about in the room. What did they say? What are they going to do? What do they think? How did you do it?
No, Gryffindors are just like, oh, cool, you're like, in it. You're in the competition. Like, that's all that really matters.
I think Gryffindor's like, we're in the competition. I think that's why maybe they're forgetting to ask Harry about feelings and his preparedness and how confident he feels or how afraid he feels, because they forget.
That's what Harry was looking through. He went looking for Ron and Hermione because he knew that they were going to be the ones that were going to, like,
treat him like an individual human and empathize and listen. And these Gryffindors are just like, I mean, they're in the tournament, but they have no consequences of death. You know what I mean? They're like, we're in it. It's like when your favorite team makes the Stanley Cup final. You know what I mean? You're so much more invested and hyped than some other team. Of course, in that case, none of them are likely to die out there. But, like, it's they want to be more invested in it. They want to be more invested in it.
It's unfortunate that for, like, most of Harry's life, he's just kind of, like, forced to deal with things that are forced upon him. Like, he doesn't have a lot of, like, agency in his life at this point, especially at Hogwarts.
Definitely does not. It's just, this is the bad thing, go deal with it. This is the bad thing, go deal with it. All the time, constantly.
No one really asks him, like, hey, Harry, are you okay? Like, are you okay with this? No one really asks him that. It's just...
And he very rarely gets actual active adult help with these problems that are always very adult. Like, to me, like, Moody, Moody, takes him under his wing, kind of, and tries to help him through the tasks. But, like, the other teachers don't know Moody's doing that. So I'm like, McGonagall, as the head of Gryffindor House and the person who thinks Harry shouldn't be there, should be pulling Harry aside and giving him tips and talking to him about, like, not the ways to win, because that shouldn't be McGonagall's concern, and I don't think it would be, but ways to not die in the tournament. Like, listen, if it's this versus this, always take this. Statistically, you're smarter with this. You're not going to be able to, like, giving him pro tips on how not to die, or, like, here's a good spell for healing wounds on yourself.
I think the only thing McGonagall does is she tells him about that he needs to get a dance partner for the Yule Ball.
And that is the least helpful advice in the history of literally anything ever. It's just not, there's a blatant lack of actual proper adulting on the part of these, and it's crazy.
But yeah, that's basically this chapter, and things are going to get serious as we go on. But do you have any other thoughts before we wrap up?
I mean, I just feel bad for Ron, and I feel bad for Harry. It's just, like, it's rough that, like, because, like, in almost any other circumstance, Ron would absolutely be supporting and loving Harry, but it's just another, like, Harry is the chosen one, Harry gets the attention, Harry gets to be the star, and it's just too many times, and I totally understand that. And, like, that's one of those, like, real life versus book things where, like, of course it's always Harry in the books because they're called Harry Potter, but when you imagine it as real life, it's hard to be like, nobody else ever gets to be the main character in this whole world, and that's gotta suck, especially for someone like Ron, who has been a part of all these big bad things happening, but never really gets as much credit because it's just another Harry Potter win, kind of.
Yeah, he's always in the background, and he just craves that validation at this point in his life.
Exactly. Like, he's willing to die on a chessboard at 12, but, like, still giving Harry a few more house points just to remind everyone that what Harry does is more important.
It's going to be hard reading, like, the Ron and Harry kind of, like, conflict because they don't really fight in the books, but I feel like when they do, it is important for their character growth. And, like, this fight, it does lead to them, I think, understanding each other a bit better and being able to come to terms and be better friends. But, like, yeah, it's definitely hard to read. I think it's also very, like, hard reading it as an adult again, because you do kind of empathize more with Ron, seeing where he's coming from, where it's hard to, like, when you're actually 14 or younger and when you're in it, you're either on like one or other side, being like this is obviously the right way. That's the fun part of reading these books as an adult, is going through and seeing like these emotions that you have dealt with growing up and having a bit more empathy for some characters in some situations that you didn't when you first read them.
It's definitely easier to sort of understand Ron more, understand that, like, he just wants his turn in the limelight. He just wants to be seen and not be one of many all the time. And it's hard then to have someone in your life who, like, puts in as much effort as you, and like Harry and Ron are both the same level of, like, Harry's a little better at school than Ron, but neither of them is particularly try hard, and neither of them, like, Ron, to see someone who you're doing the same things as always get rewards, or in Ron's mind this is some sort of reward. It's hard to be like, I don't understand why I do just as much as him and he gets all the wins. Like,
what am I doing wrong? Yeah.
It's rough. It's really hard not to be jealous for Ron. And I totally get it. And in his situation, I think I would have been mad too. I think I would have wanted to hear Harry out first, just because I am not a Gryffindor and can't imagine wanting to enter that tournament kind of at all.
I definitely have been a Ron in many situations growing up with friends.
Even as an adult, sometimes someone you love has all these, what you see as good things happening, and as happy as you are for them, you're a little bit jealous. Like, okay, all these beautiful things are happening for them. When do I get a beautiful thing to happen for me,
That's part of life. But yeah, thank you for listening to this episode of Potter Revisited, and we'll be back to discuss Chapter 18 of Goblet of Fire, The Weighing of the Wands. If you have any comments about this episode, you can email us at potterrevisitedpodcast@gmail.com, or comment on Spotify, or reach out on social media at Potter Revisited, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.